The first thing that comes to mind is full body heavy work. And this is because anytime we're doing anything that activates the muscles, pushing, pulling, weight bearing, we're activating that proprioceptive system, and that's regulating to the nervous system. So crawling, climbing, monkey bars or straight arm hangs and then crashing onto a crash pad, wall pushes, pushing a weighted medicine ball, pushing a laundry basket filled with toys down the hallway, anything that's going to work the muscles for the whole body is going to help decrease the need for sucking and chewing on things.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. We're thrilled to have you here today. I'm Rachel.
I'm Jessica.
And today we're answering a question about thumb sucking and finger sucking that we got from Instagram. What you can do about it if your child is 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10. Or any number, honestly.
Any age, really.
And if they are consistently sucking their thumb or their fingers.
Yep. So we typically call this oral sensory seeking. It's something we've talked about, I feel like, quite a bit recently.
It's a very common challenge.
Because we've been getting a lot of questions. I have several clients that I work with who are oral sensory seekers. So just kind of continuing to talk about it and hopefully helping more people answer this type of a question. Like, is it an issue? Is it something we need to address? Is it sensory related? Is it something else?
So really what we want to first start with is that in infancy, suckling, that is a natural progression. That is a natural progression of oral development. We want babies to root and suck. It's a reflex. It's literally reflexive, so that way they can survive, right? And so we want to keep in mind that when these babies are sucking or feeding or sucking on a pacifier or their thumb, they're really trying to either feed or regulate their nervous system.
But also, infants explore the environment through their mouth. So when they're not feeding and they're playing on the floor with a toy, we're going to see, hopefully, ideally, see them mouthing their toys because it's how their brain is processing that sensory information, the feel, the size, the shape, the texture of whatever that toy is. And then their brain cements that information in, and it helps them learn about these objects and these toys, and it builds that hand-eye coordination as well. So yeah, in infancy, we want to see babies mouthing things.
Ideally, babies are not putting everything in their mouths and exploring everything orally by the time they're 18 months to 2 years. Then they're going to explore their environment through their other senses. They're going to look, they're going to touch, they're going to hear, and they're going to kind of learn about what's going on in their world through their other senses. And their oral sense is going to not be the number one required sense in order to learn about their environment.
So if we do see an older child, 2 years and up, seeking input through their mouth, whether it's objects or their fingers, their thumb, we want to understand why. Because once we understand the why, then we can put together a plan that is personal for that child. Not all strategies work for all children. Some of the reasons why we would want to address the oral sensory seeking, it might not be safe. You think about a kid who maybe has pica and they're seeking a nutritional deficit because they have a nutritional deficit and they're eating rocks and bark. It's not safe. It's also spreading saliva and germs, and if the child is sick and has a bug, they're going to spread that very easily if they're mouthing objects. It might not be socially appropriate in some places, and I know that that's kind of a hot topic of what's appropriate and what's not, so keep that in mind. And then the other one would just be overall oral health. growth and palate and jaw development, which is one of the reasons why we try to get kids off the pacifier and off the bottle by a certain age, and why we try to get them to stop thumb sucking by a certain age, because if they continue to do it, it actually pushes their palate up, which narrows their jaw, and this is going to impact speech and language, feeding, and a variety of other things.
Exactly. So when it comes to finding the why, because that's usually our first instinct is, a client comes to us or someone asks us this question, all my kids are sucking their thumbs or their fingers. Like, what's the underlying why? Why are they doing it? Sometimes the first thing that comes to my mind is nervous system regulation. So they are trying to regulate their nervous system in order to kind of tap into their vagus nerve. They put their thumb onto the roof of their mouth because their tongue is not suctioning up there like it should. So that's causing them to be a little bit more dysregulated. So they're going to try and regulate by putting their thumb or their fingers in their mouth. So ideally, our tongues should be resting on the top of our mouth, on the top palate, right? So we want our tongues to kind of like have a good suction or a good seal. And if we're not getting that for a variety of reasons, maybe we do have a really high palate, maybe we have a tongue tie, then the child could be in that constant state of dysregulation because their tongue is never sealing up to the roof of their mouth, causing them to mouth breathe all the time, which is another cause of, stress on the body. You can hear me kind of like the cascade of challenges here. Like, they're all connected, but it kind of, this is like where it starts and where it stems. And then, they realize that they feel better when they have a thumb or a finger or they're chewing something. It helps them stay more regulated. So that's kind of like where my brain goes initially when someone is sucking their thumb on their fingers or putting things in their mouth constantly.
Yeah, and I always am really curious about what they're putting in their mouth, because if it does look like they're putting things in their mouth like dirt, rocks, bark, plants, then that leads me down the road to think, okay, this could be pica, this could be a nutritional deficit, which leads us down a little bit of a different route of interventions, but we can still use the same oral motor strategies that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But just keep that in mind. The other thing would be that a lot of our kids get stuck in these like habits and these routines. And so sometimes that can be an issue as well.
Yeah. And then looking at the sensory system, right? So sometimes kids are chewing on their shirts or their sleeves or their zippers or their hair in order to meet an unmet sensory need. So sometimes kids wake up in the morning and I like to think of it as a cup that has holes in it. Like, they wake up and their cup is empty and they're trying to like fill their cup with sensory input, but there's holes. So it just keeps overflowing and falling out, and they just can never like meet that threshold. Chewing and putting things in their mouth and sucking can sometimes help meet that need that they're trying to satisfy or like crave. It's like you really want to have an energy drink to like feel good, but you just can't get enough of it, right?
That's you.
My analogy for me. Yeah. Because you're just trying to feel normal and regulated and like consistent, but you can't do that with a dysregulated sensory system or with a high sensory threshold that you just can't meet that need. So that's where they start chewing on things and they're trying to again regulate their nervous system too. Like, maybe they're chewing because they're anxious about something or
angry. We see that as well, like the biting and the chewing when a child gets angry, because they feel these emotions through their body. So they express these big, powerful emotions through their body, and oftentimes that does come through as like biting or chewing on things.
Exactly.
Yes. So once we have done some detective work and we figured out why the child is sucking on their thumb, their fingers, or mouthing non-edibles, then we want to find a replacement. And the first thing that comes to mind is full body heavy work. And this is because anytime we're doing anything that activates the muscles, pushing, pulling, weight bearing, we're activating that proprioceptive system, and that's regulating to the nervous system. So crawling, climbing, monkey bars, or straight arm hangs and then crashing onto a crash pad, wall pushes, pushing a weighted medicine ball, pushing a laundry basket filled with toys down the hallway. Anything that's going to work the muscles for the whole body is going to help decrease the need for sucking and chewing on things.
Yeah, I think a common misconception is like, oh, my child is sucking or chewing or biting or mouthing things, so let's give them something to put in their mouth. But we need to take a step back and address the whole body, because sometimes they just need more input, like Jessica mentioned, on their full body. So that's why we're going to start by giving them that full body input, the heavy work to all of their joints, muscles, and tendons in order to hopefully kind of meet that need initially. Okay. So then we can add some oral motor play activities. So things like Bubble Mountain, which is one of our favorites. You just get a big bucket of water, squirt some soap in, give them a straw, and have them blow bubbles and make a giant mountain of bubbles. That one's really fun, really satisfying. We also love any straw blowing games. So giving them a straw, having them blowing cotton balls across the floor, or reversing it and having them like suck in and hold the cotton ball on the straw and then, you know, transfer it from one bowl to another, or cereal, or really anything they can do with that one. Blowing bubbles is going to be helpful, and then doing an obstacle course that includes some of these oral motor activities and the crawling and the heavy work too. We love the super duper oral motor card deck. That's a really fun one because you have the opportunity to, you know, have them look at a picture, imitate the oral motor movements and activities. And sometimes our kids who are oral seekers really struggle with that oral awareness as well. So like they can't put their tongue in their cheek, like that, if you can see me, or they can't suction their tongue to the roof of their mouth. And the card deck is just fun because it gives them new activities and new things to try and see if they can figure it out.
Yep. And then the next thing is to look at the child's diet and what food they're eating. And if they're eating a lot of really soft foods, we want to try to incorporate more resistive foods. So I mean, this could be a whole nother podcast topic about food. And we do know that a lot of these kids have, you know, really small amounts of safe foods. They're very high picky eaters, but we still want to try to expand their food to more crunchy resistive foods to help give them a lot of that input when they are eating a meal, but also to help with jaw and tongue and oral motor development. So some of our go-tos would be apple slices or carrot sticks, celery, peppers, grapes, snap peas, like freezing the grapes, freezing the blueberries. Anything frozen is going to be really great as well for regulation, even just ice cubes. We also like to freeze Go-Gurts. That's a really good one. If it's safe, jerky and beef sticks, those provide a lot of input. And then, you know, crunchy snacks like veggie straws or crackers, ideally looking for options that have fewer processed ingredients. But I mean, those veggie straws are very popular. Yeah. And they're very, very crunchy.
Yeah, definitely. You can't forget about a smoothie, like a nice cold smoothie, and drinking that through a straw. Sometimes those twisty straws are really fun and really motivating as well. Or even just drinking a cold drink through a twisty straw is going to give them a lot more oral input. So you can kind of see how we're giving them the input that they need in a more like socially appropriate way. Even something like giving them a vibrating toothbrush in the morning, you know, so that way they get a little bit more input in the morning. It's kind of like your own little sensory diet, or your own oral motor sensory diet, where it's like we wake up, we brush our teeth with our vibrating toothbrush, we drink a cold smoothie,
we do some animal walks,
we crawl down the hallway. And so that in and of itself, you're giving them more input in hopes of meeting that need, so that way when they go to school, they're not going to have to chew on their shirt all day in order to stay regulated. So then you can add in some additional products like chew necklaces, those chewy pencil toppers, the zipper pulls, necklaces. I think they even have like fabric necklaces now that you can like chew on, so they're not chewing on their clothes. So you can replace that item if necessary, but ideally we want to start from the inside out before we're giving them an additional product to chew on.
You could totally create a sensory diet routine for the morning, the afternoon, and the bedtime using everything we just talked about, using the full body heavy work, using the oral motor activities, the crunchy chewy foods, the tools as needed, and you could use all of those to create a sensory diet for different parts of the day. Because remember, a sensory diet's not just completed one and done and then we're good to go. It needs to be several times throughout the day to regulate throughout the day. You know, you don't just have one cup of water and you're good for the day, right? It needs to be throughout the day several times. So
1 cup of water.
I was going to say coffee, and I'm like, no, but some people are fine with 1 cup of coffee. coffee, but like 1 cup of water a day, you're gonna be so dehydrated, right? So you need to do these sensory activities multiple times throughout the day for the child to get what they actually need, and then repeat and modify as needed.
Yep. Think proactively instead of reactively with the sensory input that you're giving them.
Yep. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, let us know. You can leave us a comment. You can leave us a review. You can take a screenshot and share this episode on social media to let everyone know that you're listening and that it was helpful. And I think that's it.
Yeah. If you have questions, let us know. But we appreciate you being here, and we'll plan on seeing you next week for another episode.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.